Hi, welcome to Big Smith News Watch. My name is Levi Smith, and today we'll be speaking with Adrian Wade. Mr. Wade is an apostle. He's also an author, and so he will tell us a little bit about what he does and what he does. But of course, welcome to Big Smith News Watch, Mr. Wade.
Well, it's an honor to be here, Mr. Smith. And I must say that news of news of you have gone way wide, even overseas. And it's really a joy to come into future in such an important network as yours.
All right, so tell us about Adrian Wade. We're going to get into what you do, but let's talk a little bit of you before what you did.
Okay, Adrian Wade is a West Coast Bobese youth. That's where I'm from, and I was raised in a village called Litchfield on the west coast of Bobese. And at a very early age, I was brought to Georgetown, and from Georgetown, I went to what we used to call the under 12 school and wrote my common entrance and so on. And there was a shift at one time where I went to a school called Bushlot Sec on the West Coast Police, but just for a term or two, and they brought me back because it didn't work. And I was brought back to South Georgetown Government Secondary, where I was very much involved in sports, playing cricket for Georgetown and running as an athlete in the interzones and in school, you know. So, and from there I went to GTI and did land surveying. Did a diploma in land surveying that took me back to Bobese, where I worked as a land survey technician with the MMA ADA. And from thence, during that stint, I really got into full-time ministry. But I was saved at First Assemblies of God. In those days, the youths from the Alberton area, that's where I grew up. In those days, they used to call the youth the King Alpha Dreads. I was a dreadlock. I got in my last school days, I got into heavy marijuana and bad boy business. I got saved. Well, that's I got saved. I got saved. But, I was telling somebody it was not my most pleasant memories because many times I would come to town and see people that I know were brilliant young people eating out of garbage bins, lives messed up because of marijuana. Some would want to say that it was not the marijuana, but I still blame the marijuana because I know, I was there. I saw it. And there probably would have been some greedy people mixing the drug with things, but I saw people. I can call names of people that had the potential of becoming great national footballers, great intellects and so on. Great musicians, young people that I knew, and if I show you some of them in Georgetown, you will be shocked at what or who they used to be before they got sucked into. I got a lot to say into marijuana, and it destroyed them. So I got a passion against drugs and drug use because I've been there and I've done that. Back to you, sir.
Yeah, so you're now into authoring and books, and so
Yes.
tell us a bit about some of the books that
Yes.
you would have written and what inspired those books.
Okay. Let me say that my writing career started in around 2005. I was doing a lot of ministry from Guyana, in around Guyana, and in some Caribbean islands, I had come together with an apostle in Trinidad and Tobago called Vernon Duncan and another Youth for Christ leader, a guy by the name of Frank Porter. And both of these gentlemen, Frank was writing for school, the school system in Trinidad and Tobago. He's writing school books. And he had quite a lot of his books in the Trinidad school system, catering for the young people. And Apostle Vernon Duncan, he was doing spiritual stuff. And after being with them, and they began to put pressure on me. They said, Apostle Wade, you got so much, to give. Why are you not writing? And that kind of inspired my first book, a book called A Good Man Leaves an Inheritance for His Children. I wrote that book in 2005. I wrote that book in 2005. It was featured some in local newspapers and so on. People might still be able to go pick up a copy at the library or something. But that book I spoke a lot about. I dealt with this whole thing because there's a problem. There was a problem in the nation. I always try to, in my writings, deal with issues that affect the nation, issues that affect people on the whole. Because I'm always concerned. It's like I've got a soft spot for people. So the things that trouble people always motivate me to pen something. And I was concerned at that time, the youths, there was a term, good man. Everybody, yeah man, you greet you, say, yeah man, you're a good man. And the good men of the day were people that were into, were the pusher man and the people with the bling bling and those are the people that were looked to in the nation as being a good man. And so I addressed it because, I said, listen, this thing's going to destroy our young people. And so I wrote this book, A Good Man Leaves an Inheritance, to bring attention that a good man is not just a man with 6, 7, a girl in Buxton, a girl in Georgetown, a girl in some in Bobbies, and a girl in in Albistown with copper bling bling and a big bike. I brought it. In the book I use biblical language and biblical writings to show that a good man is a man who really leaves an inheritance to his children, and the importance of men really ensuring that they leave an inheritance to their children instead of just being men or becoming fathers that serve children. That does not make you a good man. When you're able to mold those children and to leave an inheritance to them, when at the end of the day, then we can put that label on you that, yeah, this is a good man.
What if you don't have an inheritance to leave?
Well, you failed. You failed. You failed as a father. You failed to me as a man. You cannot carry the label of a good man. As a good man, you should ensure that those that are coming behind you, you leave a platform for them to branch off from, to leap from.
Mm-hmm. So, what are the names of some of the other books, the titles?
Okay. For this course, there's a book called Caught Up. There's a book called Caught Up. And there's a book called Pigtail Cook Up. And that's the one I really, wanted to come to share about, because Pigtail Cook Up deals with growing up as a child in West Coast Bobbies. Some of the experiences, and I think I even putting something about one of the stories covered my childhood growing up in the Albertown area. The stories are very, very real. In some cases, I not, because of not wanting to offend people who are still alive, I twist the names of the characters but the stories are very, very, real stories that I experienced as a youth, or, stories that I heard growing up. And so these stories are so rich that I said, man, our generation is going to go off the scene, and it will be, an injustice to the coming generations not to have heard these stories or experiences these stories growing up.
Tell us a little more about Pigtail, since you're more interested in us.
Well, yeah, we could talk pigtail. Pigtail cook-up, pigtail cook-up, as the name suggests. I wanted to, in putting that together, what I wanted to do is to cross the racial divide. And growing up in the village of Litchfield, we did not have that racial problem that, much, or, it's like...
Well, I think that's because that particular village is predominantly...
It's a predominantly Negro, but we have our neighboring village where Indians come. So we all go to school together. We all come and go to each other and might, play with each other. And we, as much as Litchfield, we had children coming from Kingley, Indian children from the 40s, and so we all blended together. There were no difference, and Indian men were very much in relationships with African women from the village, and also vice versa, So it's like people respected people for who they were in growing up in those days. So some of the stories had people of different races involved, and the intent is to present or to bring to life that part of my childhood, that part of the history of Guyana that I think passed, and there was not much chronicling of it. And in Pigtail Cook-Up, I brought that, little boy growing up and seeing all of these stories, seeing these things, amazing stories that would, it's very humorous. It's a very humorous book. It will have you laughing, and it's not a big book, but once you get into it, it's kind of grips you and will have you, laughing, and especially for people, people my age, they will be lost in the memories of growing up, because they will be able to identify with some of these issues that I brought out, some of the stories I tell.
All right, so tell us how can persons get the book?
Oh, Amazon.com. One could be able to go on to Amazon.com and pick up, and on Kindle, and pick up Pigtail Cook-Up. It's there, and with many other books that I've written.
All right, and so what are the search engines that will cause them to be able to...
Pigtail Cook-Up by Adrian Wade.
Adrian Wade. So once we type in Adrian Wade...
Once you type in it by
all of your
Pigtail
publications.
Right, you'll be able to follow all my yes. And once, there's another guy, I think it's coincidentally, that goes by that name. And he's an author, but he writes out of Europe, and he tells horror stories.
Okay.
Yeah, he tells horror stories. White guy, so you won't be able to mix it up. My stuff are basically spiritual stuff. I do poems also, and I did I did about 2 other little novels. One time I did one. I was so moved by the every time this racial thing comes up in Guyana, it kind of hurt me, because I hate to see our people divided, and I think it's one of the big mistakes of our politicians, and I hate to see it being dragged on. It's not right. It's not right, and our politics have been so messed up that because of the race thing, it's like every time somebody, we have raised up great politicians, But because of the nature of our politics, is that our politicians, they just see each other as enemies when it comes to governance. And so, in folly, I think it's folly. They probably think it's in bravado, but it's in much folly. They will come into power and keep destroying what each other's done for the betterment of the nation, and the nation perishes. The nation goes backward instead of leaping forward. I trust that wisdom will prevail and that we will move away from that winner-take-all politics. It's not been doing any good for our people and for our nation. And as I said, the racism has been a very much part of that, and have not served to let there be truly a one Guyana.
Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
To the people of Guyana, the young people especially, I see great young people in this studio, and to you yourself, do not estimate the impact that you can have upon the nations and the world in a whole. Sometimes we tend to think, well, I'm a little black boy, a little Guyanese boy, I cannot touch the world. But I'm saying you can. You can do anything you want to do, or be anything that you want to be. Just believe in yourself and go for it. There's greatness in every one of us. And I encourage you to rise up and go to be the best you that you could be. Thank you.
We were speaking with Adrian Wade. My name is Levi Smith. Thank you very much for joining us here.